key point to this is the valve, where the valve guide is. You want to make sure that when you're in here doing your old very, very light grinding, or cleaning up, at least, that you're not nicking this at all. You don't want to mess with the structural integrity of this right here while the engine's in operation, start getting under high heat load. You don't want to have a potential for it to start to crack and then that valve start to wobble during operations as it's going in and out of this guide. So pay attention that you don't touch that. It's just as important, I would say, as the the valve seat, not nicking that. And of course, keeping in mind while you're going, as you're going along with the grinder, that you're not pushing really hard into one spot or at all. You're just kind of lightly touching it just to get any kind of mill scale, dirt, grime, and or any pits out of here. And every so often you'll see the seam. Now this is kind of where the valve seats start to meet, so you don't want to lay on this too much. But there's other parts of the casting that you can see here where the seams are. You don't have to get these completely flush, or at least I don't. I just kind of get it to where it's a little bit more streamlined, where a little bit less of a bump, but you don't have to completely take this line out of here. But some people do. I don't necessarily. But like, keep in mind that this is not like a solid wall. Or it is a solid wall, but like, it's not completely solid all the way until the next intake, right? Because you have these water jackets in here, and if you look in here, you can see that it's hollow in here. So you only have, in this water jacket, you only have so much till you start hitting the intake. So there's all that gap, so it doesn't go all the way. It's not a complete fix, so be careful, especially if you feel like you want to work with a more aggressive grind. That's why I say don't lay into it. That's why I'm just barely, like I said before, like I'm just kissing it, just a little kiss. Take off the little mill scale, dirt, whatever's on there, anything that'll get sucked up into the combustion chamber, I'm getting that off of there. And again, I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure you wear your eye protection. And also, you don't want to be breathing any metal flakes in, so make sure you wear some type of mask. I know masks right now are somewhat of a shortage because of COVID-19. However, you still want to use some type of respirator or mask so you're not breathing that stuff in. as you can see, I'm kind of like halfway through this. I'm about to show you guys a little bit of my process that I am using right now with a very light grinding tool, or at least the lightest grinding tool that I have. I'm not sure if you can see the difference in material that's still on there, material that I've taken off, but I'm kind of using, well, like I said, the lightweight grinding tool that I have. I'll show you a couple of them. One is this guy right here, just to get in nooks and crannies, but it can only go so far until I need to start using this guy here to get into some of these areas right here, as you can see. In conjunction with, let's see what we got over here. We got wire brush here, wire wheels. I've been using that mainly after I take minimal amounts off, and then I'll finish it up with a wire wheel, but that one's a little too big to get into here, into the intake. So I have a Dremel attachment to get into those little nooks and crannies and take off that excess material there. Of course, minding the valve seat. I don't want to touch anything with that other than valve or lapping compound. Like I said, if you guys have any suggestions, I'm sure there's some machinists out there who have a lot more experience than I do with stuff like this, that can tell me like, hey, you're doing it wrong, or or just maybe a slight critique here and there. Just let me know, drop that down in the comments. it's kind of an update here. So I'm on the third exhaust port here, and as you can see, this is kind of what I'm going for. Hopefully you guys can see that on camera. Just that crud that I'm trying to get out of there. You can see all the little scrape marks from my tool that I'm using, a little straight edge here, or the little fine pointed. I got a couple of them I got from a local hardware store. But I'm just trying to get that crud that's been built up. You know, I'm not doing too aggressive of a grind. You can see there's still some little pits in there, but I just kind of smooth her out just a little bit. I am not opening up, I'm not opening up this any wider for a couple of reasons, because, you know, there's some geometry not too difficult to understand, but just things you got to understand, like when you're porting, if you're trying to port an exhaust or an intake, make sure that it's going to link back up to your gasket, your intake gasket or your exhaust gasket, whichever one you're porting. You know, usually if you're porting both, but like I said, I'm just kind of smoothing it out. I'm trying to keep like a little bit rough, but really, like I said, just trying to get all that crud out of there. 230,000 mile engine, trying to get it back hopefully to OEM, if not better than the factory, because let's face it, especially with these cast iron parts here, you can see right there where, you know, when they cast these parts to save costs, instead of having, you know, a machinist come in and port them or polish them appropriately, the car makers figure, well, it'll work well enough for you, so they just skip that part and then they give it to you with, you know, these little seams and stuff like here that haven't been polished out. So that's why I'm taking the time to do that, since I got this engine apart and I got the heads in front of me. I'm trying to get all that big pile of stuff, and that's just one run getting that soot out of there. I'll do multiple passes just of this one port, and as you can see, I've already gone through all the ports. So you got this one, and then you got an intake and then another exhaust that I worked on right there. You can see that. You see it's not perfect, but you know, it's just enough just to get a lot of that gunk cleaned out of there. And this exhaust port here. Now I'm trying to mine remember I was talking about before, the valve seat here. I got some lapping compound. You can see the difference of how it used to look and how much of the pitting is gone. You can see some along the edge, but I'm confident that it's going to be way better than what it was, and I believe this right here will seat properly without causing any major issues.